when you're running, you run for hours.
Days.
What days?
For a lot of people, you sort of embody the idea of hardening your mind
Right.
and figuring out a way to do things that most people think are impossible.
Right.
You've sort of become that guy.
Hey Rabbits, what's going on? Welcome back to another video. No matter if you love or hate David Goggins, there are certainly a few very valuable lessons we can learn from him as runners and athletes in general. David Goggins was born in 1975 and didn't exactly have a very peaceful childhood. Not only was he and his mother constantly abused by his tyrannical father, but he also had to deal with an awful lot of adversity like racism and learning difficulties throughout his teenage years. One day, after coming home from his day job as a pest control fumigator, basically spraying poison on cockroaches and rats in shitty restaurants, he watched a military show on TV that completely turned his life around, and he became obsessed with the idea of becoming a Navy SEAL, which he did. That process steered his life towards becoming the toughest man on this planet. And after reading his book and researching about his life, I really think this is an understatement. Today, he's a bit of a controversial athlete due to his no pain, no gain mentality. But guess what?
I had to stop giving a fuck about people.
So according to Goggins, there are two types of people when it comes to training: theorists and practitioners. Theorists spend a lot of time researching books and learning about what other people have done in their training. Practitioners try everything and see what works for them so they can make up their own mind.
So I never read anything. I could barely read, so
Right.
I wasn't reading back then.
And you guessed it, Goggins is definitely a practitioner, which means that he had to learn a lot of the lessons the very hard way, through nasty injuries.
My body was just jacked up. Couldn't sleep. My whole body was just down, shutting down.
For example, his way of getting better at running long distances was simply to run a little further every day.
That's how I train. And yesterday I ran a 5K in 19 minutes. So today I'm gonna run the same 5K in 18:55. That's how I train. Just go out and do more than you did the day before.
Now, if you've been following this channel for a little bit, you know that this is not the best way to train yourself to become a better runner.
That kind of training program gets you one way: fucking injured and overtrained.
After years of hard training and horrible injuries, he finally has today a healthy running routine. And I picked up the 3 most valuable lessons we can learn from him as runners. So let's start with lesson number 1, mental toughness. Running long distances is definitely a mental sport, as you have to constantly shut up that little voice inside you that tells you to stop. A lot of people do not understand why David Goggins trains the way he does, and say that there is no physical benefit of training so hard. But the real reason why he's training so hard is because he's not training his body, he's actually training his mind.
Mentally, I'm training for life. I'm not training for to lift 400 pounds. Through repetition of things you don't want to do, you develop like an armor for your mind.
And for me, the best story to illustrate that was his first ever running event, the San Diego One Day. So back in 2005, one of his close comrades died at war.
So that happened, and I was like, man, I gotta find a way to raise money for these families. So I Googled the 10 hardest races in the world. And what comes up is a Badwater 135. It's a 135-mile race through Death Valley in the summertime. So I called the race director up at the race and said, hey, Chris, his name is Chris Costman, I wanna do your race. So we had a long conversation. I was much heavier then, and I hadn't put running shoes on in over a year.
How heavy are you at this point?
I'm around between 240 to 270.
Whoa.
I'm in there. I'm in that range. My weight has varied a lot through the SEAL teams and out of the SEAL teams, so I was a heavy guy. But the long and short of it all was I hadn't put running shoes on in over a year. I was a big-time power lifter. I lifted weights heavy. That's what I did.
Right.
I got back home from Iraq, went straight to free fall school, and then this happened. So I called Chris Costman up on a Wednesday. He says, look, man, the only way you can qualify for my race is to run 100 miles at one time in 24 hours or less. There happened to be a race that Saturday, so 4 days later. And he said, if you qualify by running 100 miles or less in 24 hours, I will consider you my race. I'm gonna cut to the chase. I signed up for this race. It's called the San Diego One Day, where you run around a 1-mile track for 24 hours to see how many miles you can get. My goal was 100 miles. So I got to mile 70, and I cleared 70 miles in like 12, 13 hours pretty quickly. But I was done. My feet were broken. I was stretch fractures, shin splints, muscles were tearing. I was in bad shape. I was eating Ritz crackers and drinking Mileplex. That's all I had. No water, didn't know what the hell I was doing out there. Had on some tube socks It was just ridiculous. It was a clown show. So I sat down at mile 70, and at this time I was married. And I look at my wife and I was like, I'm messed up bad. So I literally start to turn white. And when a black guy turns white, you're pretty fucked up. So here I am, I'm all fucked up in this chair. I'm at mile 70, I got 30 fucking miles to go. I'm jacked up. I gotta go to the bathroom, and the bathroom's like 20 feet from me. It's a porta potty. I can't get out of the fucking chair. So I'm peeing blood down my leg.
Whoa.
Pooping up my fucking back. And I got 30 miles to go. And I can't stand up because my blood pressure's all messed up. I've been in 3 hell weeks, Ranger School, overcome so many obstacles in my life. This last 30 miles of this race is when I realized a human being is not so human anymore. We have the ability to go in such a space if you're willing to suffer, and I mean suffer. Your brain and your body, once connected together, can do anything.
And even though this is completely and utterly nuts, it proves one point. If you have a strong mind, there's nothing you cannot accomplish. Lesson number 2, heart rate training. After training and running like this and breaking his body in different ways, Goggins understood that this was not the best way to train his body for running, and that the best way to train your heart is to build a strong base, a strong engine, which you get by running a lot in heart rate zone 2, okay, under your maximum aerobic heart rate. So he started to do a lot of slow running.
A lot of my days when I'm tired are in zone 1. Zone 1 is active recovery heart rate. My zone 2 is basically from like a 140 to like a 157 heart rate. And I do 80% of my training in a zone 2. Most of us back in the day when I was training had a very inefficient heart. Because I woke up, I just ran. When you train most of your miles at a zone 2 heart rate, that heart rate is becoming very, very strong, and everything is very effective at that heart rate.
And it paid off quickly as he ran his first marathon under 3 hours and qualified for the Boston Marathon. On top of that, he's won a few ultra marathons around the world, like the McNaughton 150 miler in 2008, the Music City Ultra 50K, the Infinitus 88K, which is one of the toughest trail races in the world, and the Across Florida 200-mile race. Lesson number 3, stretch. Another lesson Goggins learned the hard way was by not stretching at all. So at the very beginning of his running career, he was still biased towards bodybuilding. And he thought that stretching actually makes you weaker.
I saw this doc about 8 years before this happened. And he was like, hey man, you're so fucking tight. I've never seen anybody in my life as tight as you. You need 50,000 hours of stretching. He threw out some crazy number. I was like, whatever, stretching, stretching's bad for you. So
You thought stretching was bad for you?
yeah, stretching is bad for you, man.
Why did you think that?
I read some article, man, fuck stretching, man.
So he never stretched at all. And when he put all that running on top of his already tight body, his hips and legs completely locked up. And this led to almost paralysis, as he couldn't even get out of bed in the morning as his muscles and his hips were so tight.
The stress of my life getting to 24 caused me to have some serious psoas issues. I didn't know anything about this shit. The psoas muscle is what we use. It's your hip flexor muscle. And basically under stress, it starts to tighten up. And so I'm 6'1", but my muscles were like 5'9", because I just started, the muscle tightness from my psoas going to my T12, I was just getting tighter, my quads, everything getting tired from just stress in my life. If I were to tell somebody one thing right now, man, that psoas muscle and getting that hip flexor opened up, because we're all stressed the fuck out. It's so much worse than others. It changed my life.
So the last lesson of this video is stretch. Especially if you're a runner who also goes to the gym and throws some weight around. Stretch. If you want to learn something from Courtney Dauwalter, you can click there. And lastly,
Stay fucking hard!